Howdy, all. Normally, we like to start with something non-hockey related, so I'm going to go with this. And I was just flipping through the channels earlier this morning because I'm recovering from one of those 24-hour flus that are just so enjoyable.
Oh yeah.
We come to realize when it comes to movies that sequels are never as good as the original, but sometimes sequels can be pretty good. Godfather 2 is
Godfather 2 is always the best example.
Yeah. Now, Raiders of the Lost Ark was one of my favorite movies as a kid. I thought the Temple of Doom sucked. I thought it was terrible.
It was bad.
But
in comparison, it was bad.
Yeah, but the third one, the one with Sean Connery as his dad, I thought
much better.
Was really good. But they had to go back to the well again. And I've never have watched from beginning to end the fourth one, the Crystal Skull, Indiana Jones, with Shia LaBeouf as the son. And they bring
I think I did. It was okay. It was better than I thought it would be. But it wasn't great.
It was I thought it was terrible. And that's the thing. It's like this is the trend in Hollywood, and I don't understand it. They like the fact that a sequel is a guaranteed audience, so they will make sequels, but the sequel is never as good as the original, so it'll never make as much money as the original or the previous sequel. So they're guaranteed a loss in a way, but they're not guaranteed a big loss. That's what I don't understand.
They have guaranteed branding, and that's all they care about. So this way they don't have to rebrand something new. Their problem is if they have something new, they have to let you know about it, and that costs a lot of money. Rebranding something is cheaper because you're like, oh, I know that movie, and then it's up to you whether you see it or not, but they don't have to spend as much on advertising.
Now, go ahead, Peter.
No, I was going to say, it's essentially, unless you're a Star Wars, there's another example where the sequel was better, or this is Empire Strikes Back.
Right.
Unless you're like a Star Wars where there's this continuing kind of story. That's why the Harry Potter movies did well, because they were technically sequels, but they're part of a bigger story.
Right.
And a lot of movies are like, speaking of sequels coming out, what does everyone think about what Trainspotting is going to be like?
How do you come here? I won't even bother.
Yeah, 20 years after the fact. I mean,
it'll be the same thing as Longest Yard. Like, why would I even try and see that again when the first one was so good? There's just no point.
Yeah. No, yeah. I mean, there are some, and the thing is, sometimes it can be successful where a movie from 20, 25, 30 years ago, and they make a continuation of the story, like The Color of Money was a remake of The Hustler.
Yeah, and that was good.
And that was good because it was sort of Paul Newman, not as the young kid, but as the old, and Tom Cruise was the young kid with the headstrong thing. It was. It depends
on the actors. Like, as an example, using that Longest Yard one, I mean, Adam Sandler's following Burt Reynolds. Forget it. Like, that's just like, it's not even comparable. That's why I never even gave it the time of day. And if you're following a movie that, let's say, Gene Hackman was in, and I already saw it with Gene Hackman, there's very little chance I'm going to see your movie. It's just the way it is. So I think it all depends who the actor is. If you feel like let's just say, I don't know, name a Gene Hackman movie that was good.
The French Connection.
Okay. So let's say they remade The French Connection with, I don't know, Christian Bale. Maybe I'd give it a second look because it's Christian Bale. Now, let's say it was Shia LaBeouf, like you said. No way. There's no shot.
Right. Yeah. Well, all I can say is, and I wasn't a great fan of this movie, but I finally got the chance to see it from beginning to end. Talk about a creative way of doing a sequel or a continuation. The movie Creed was a very creative way. It was okay, but it was good, Russ. It was good. It was actually
okay. I don't think it was great. I don't think it was bad. I thought it was okay.
Now, if they go and they make a we're going to talk about that in a second, Peter. Believe me. If they're going to make a Creed 2 or a Creed 3, which they probably are going to do, then I think we're getting a little far afield. But I mean, the whole part of it was.
Here's the bigger picture. The bigger picture is now, with all the multi-platform TV and entertainment, like they said, Netflix is available to 54% of American households. As an example, I'm hot and cold with Netflix because in 2 months I burn it out. So I backlog everything for 5 months, watch everything in 2, and then quit for 4. Like, it's just, that's pretty much the way it works because there's not enough to keep me interested the whole time. So to me, the bigger picture is what will get you into the movie theater, not what will get you to watch a movie, because there are plenty of movies made knowing that they're going to hit that secondary market. I had that as a plan, so she would go play with it.
Is there a tornado in your studio?
No, it's just Anna. But the point is, right? I mean, sometimes movies are made knowing that, hey, we'll give it a weekend release. If it doesn't do well, it'll go. It's no longer straight to video. It'll go to the
straight to Oblivion. It's basically what
it'll go to that TV area where we sell it before DVD. You could watch it for like $25. Then it'll be renting and on Netflix and whoever else buys rights to it. What gets you into the theater? And you know what? There's only like 3 or 4 movies a year that get me into the theater.
Yeah. I don't need to spend $15 to get into a recliner. So there you go. All right, let's start the show. And okay. Peter, I want to bring that up first because it's although I don't know.
You want to bring that up first? We had a worked out topic, but it's Leafs, so let's bring up the Leafs.
Let's start.
No. Leafs are more important than anything else that could possibly go on in hockey.
But yes, this is going to affect everyone, and I think one of the things.
It doesn't affect me. How's it going to affect me?
Well, it's not going to affect me because Jets never make the playoffs. So I don't have to worry about that. It's kind of like the New York Jets.
Don't even go there. Your team
Cutler talking
won anything. The Jets have won a Super Bowl. What has your teams ever won, Peter?
Yes, but you were 6 when that happened, Russ.
Doesn't matter. I was alive.
I was a month old when the Leafs won a Stanley Cup. Does that count?
6 counts more than a month. But go ahead.
Peter, you follow me on the intro. Hello, Hockey World. Today is Monday, March the 13th, 2017.
Hi, I'm Pete Tessier from HockeyBuzz.
I'm Russ Cohen from Sportsology.
And I'm Michael Lagello, and this is the HockeyBuzzcast here on HockeyBuzz.com. We have a number of interesting games over the weekend. The standings have switched a little bit in the Eastern and Western Conference, and a number of key injuries have popped up. But I wanted to start with this, Peter. I've heard about what's going on, but I really have, being the Leaf reporter, I should be on this, but I've been a little under the weather lately. So what did you have on this the Leaf situation with the tickets, with the playoff tickets?
Okay, so basically, I guess there was an article in Sportsnet that just came out, and a few other things where the Leafs are justifying their prices of tickets by saying it's to help discourage the secondary ticket market. I put out a tweet on that I said what I learned on Twitter today is that most people don't really understand the ticketing industry. The ticketing industry is something that people think just because a product's there, it should be accessible at a price point. But the price point is what's determining why there's a secondary market. Right. Mm-hmm. Because they're underpricing the event. So it doesn't matter if you're a hockey fan, an Eric Church fan, a Madonna fan, a Lady Gaga, you name it.
Right.
The price point is what drives the ticket market based on demand for the tickets. So the demand will only be there to a certain price point. So if you price the tickets appropriately, there's no room for the secondary market and demand to go that way.
I'll give you an example, Peter.
And that's what people are missing the point of.
You're right.
And until you get rid of all the other elements of pre-sales, passwords, preferred things, holdbacks, you're going to have to price them appropriately or get rid of that. It's one or the other. So price them appropriately.
I've been to one event in the last 25 years that was priced appropriately. And of course, it's hard to get into. Green Day had a concert here before their tour. They played in 3 or 4 venues across the U.S. and they made every ticket $50. Didn't matter. They were like, everything's general admission. And then when you got to the place, you had to wait on 1 of 4 lines and you knew you were getting in because you had a ticket. You just had to wait, how long do you want to wait online? And so everybody only paid $50.
Yeah.
Well, to me, that's a great way to do it because then there was no secondary market. There were no scalpers walking around. No scalpers had access to tickets because people just kept them.
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
novel idea.
I mean, the entrepreneurs outside of on Bay Street and outside of Bay Street, took a bath the last couple of years with the Leafs being as bad as they were. Nobody really wanted tickets, and for them to make their money back, they had to at least get on par. This year, I think they've been able to, be able to make some of their money back. But now I know that for regular season games, like the platinum tickets, that's most of the ones that the Bay Street investors and lawyers and whatever, they have their boxes or their seats in the platinums, and those tickets are around 400 to 450 Canadian a game, a seat. The tickets in the second level are around $200, and then it goes up, and then the tickets in what would be considered the 300 level in Buffalo, which is the purples at ACC, are about $90. So if they're increasing those amounts, and I would assume they're doing what Buffalo has done, they're probably increasing those amounts by 20 to 25%. I don't know what specifically, but if that's what they're doing, all they're doing is increasing the secondary market 25%, because they're still going to go out there because the tickets won't be available. They're still going to go out, and the people outside are going to be selling at an even jacked up price. It's not going to eliminate the secondary market. It's just going to make that more expensive.
Or it will eliminate it because you've hit the final price point. Like there's a certain point, like honestly, there's a certain point of price where it's actually better to be in the bar across the street from ACC than it is to be in the ACC. And it's better to be in front of my 65-inch TV with high def, my cheaper beer, my better food, and my friends than it is to be sitting in a 500 large into a venue.
How many friends do you really have, Peter? I mean, come on, we have to count them up.
Yeah, okay, there's two. But I mean, they're good guys, right? Like,
yeah.
And that's the point. The fan experience now is almost equivalent with technology on your TV as it is to the environment of being there.
Well,
if you can recreate
what's the price that we're talking about? What price are we bitching about?
What price?
Yeah.
Well, I don't really care because I mean, to me, the price is immaterial to it. It's the fact that there's people who, my issue is that people aren't understanding that the ticket industry works differently than your normal supply and demand.
No, I know, but we know that they're going up. What's the supposed price that we're complaining about?
I can't remember because I haven't seen the total list of it. I got to pull up the article. I just haven't.
I mean, just ballpark. We have a ballpark.
I bet you anything it's about a 20 to 25% increase.
Yeah.
So what would that be, Mike? What would a price be for? Because most people don't sit lower bowl anyhow. People watch this show. Most of them don't sit lower bowl.
I'm gonna look it up.
Aside from the lower bowl, I'd be interested to know what the ticket prices are.
Well, I mean, I'll look as we're going here, but because
Okay.
I mean, if it's any more than like I said, right now a purple is $90. If it's anything more than 125 for a purple, then I think they're really going overboard, because all you're going to do is exclude the people who want to be there for those games, the true fans.
Or they're going to ante up. I mean, that's really
well, yeah, I get that, but the thing is, I was there. I was at ACC for a game against the Montreal Canadiens last month before the deadline, Saturday night. That's the primo ticket. If it's not Leaf fans, it's Habs fans. They went in for that game, and there were empty seats. There were empty seats in premium locations. Not a ton. I think it was like 95% full, but there were empty seats. And back in the day, that was never the case. Now, bouncing back from finishing 27th overall and 30th overall is difficult. But now they have Matthews. Now they have Marner. It might, and it could have been, the weather wasn't a consideration there. So there were empty seats for a reason. And that's a bit curious.
But they won't be in the playoffs no matter what they charge.
But you know what this does? If the price increase is exponential, if it's ridiculous, then you're going to have more people stuffed into Maple Leaf Square, Russ, than you are going to be in the building. You're going to have it's not going to be a half full building, obviously. It'll be 95% full. But you're going to have more people standing outside watching the game on a big screen in Maple Leaf Square for free and jumping around like a mosh pit than you are going to be inside the arena watching the game.
Or you'll be at Peter's house. I mean, you have a choice.
Yeah. It's a long drive to Winnipeg, though.
No, but you could watch it at home. I mean, you don't have to go to Maple Leaf Square.
No, but
exactly. And I think the point is that teams have to be. I mean, fans. Eventually, fans are going to catch up. We're always the last ones to catch up. The guy who we're manipulated by the market. And eventually, when you start having these price points, you're going to start seeing the fans manipulating the market eventually, because they're the ones whose dollars there's no more water to pull from the well at a certain point. There always will be in Toronto for well-heeled businessmen, but there won't, or business people, let's be correct here, but there won't be for the average guy in a lot of other places.
Well, I think what will happen is what happens in a lot of other sports. You may buy tickets for the entire playoffs and decide, I'm not going to go to more than one game in round one, or I'm not going to go to round one at all. I'll go to 2 games in round 2, then I'll sell the rest. I'll go to 1 Stanley Cup game, and I'll sell the rest. I mean, that may be what ends up happening. The Leafs have the right to do it. We know that. But that's what happens. I mean, I can only think of one time in my entire life where I remember tickets going down, and that was Jim Dolan. He said when the Rangers were on the run of not making the playoffs, if we don't make the playoffs this year, I will drop ticket prices. And he was a man of his word, and he did. The next year, he dropped them like 10%. And that's the only time I can recall them going down. There may be a time when they finally subside and teams don't raise them, but they're not going down.
Yeah,
it's just not happening.
If I could pull up this article on the Toronto Star website here, I would give you here you go. Well, I mean, this is this is an indication for season tickets, not for playoff tickets, but there has to be some component. There always is a jack up of playoff.
Okay, but what's the season ticket for, like, your average ticket price there?
Well, it says that next season ticket prices will rise between $7 and $16 per ticket.
Okay, so what is this year if I want to sit, middle level?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, Russ, I don't know we know that season tickets usually are a discount on the per game ticket, and they have a variable pricing plan. So I can only guess based on the average, the average ticket price times 41 games that
No, but I know, but
price,
like if you go,
the ticket price for a pair of tickets is probably around $16,000 Canadian. I mean, I don't know. I'm only guessing.
I don't think we even need to go that far. I think we just need to go far enough that, hey, if you go buy a single game and you're walking around, what's it costing you now? $75 Canadian?
If you're looking for a purple for a game this Saturday against Chicago, it's probably going to run you $100.
Okay. If you're 100 American or Canadian?
Canadian. If you're buying it from a scalper, it's probably going to be a little bit jacked up. So I'd say about $100 Canadian.
Okay, so maybe next year that's what people are paying for their seasons. For that will be 100, and for the playoffs it'll be 30% more. I mean, that's I got to tell you, it's not that outrageous. It's not, because this is the world we live in.
But I think the philosophy is flawed. If the motivation to increase ticket prices is to discourage the secondary market, nothing.
Other than the way that band did that one batch of shows, you can't.
Yeah, nothing.
The simple answer is you can't.
Nothing.
Yeah, you can. You price them appropriately based on.
You can't. I mean, I'm going to go, Peter. I'm going to tell you, and I attend so many different things. There's been so many times when bands and people all say, yes, we're doing this, and it's going to deter the secondary market, and it never does.
It gets hijacked. I know, for example.
You have a commodity out there that is a limited supply for an event, and that event reoccurs in different places across the country or whatever. Yes. Once that commodity is out there and it's a tradable commodity, there is a secondary market, but only if it becomes an affordable commodity. If the commodity isn't affordable to have money made off of it anymore.
Well, name me something that you know of. Even the Super Bowl doesn't come into contact with that. Nothing that I can think of has priced itself out to the point where I've seen a promoter say, yeah, we got to cancel the tour because we're not selling tickets. I can't think of anything.
That's because they priced them too low.
Well, that's the promoter got the money that they expected if they sold out the event. It's just they're not making all the money possible that they could because the secondary market took it. Like, for example, the Paul McCartney show that I went to in Buffalo a couple years ago, that concert sold out in 5 seconds.
Right.
Why? Not because people like me could get a ticket, because I couldn't. It's because the secondary market, the bots, these ticket brokers use, bought up all the tickets and then flipped them and resold them for 50, 75, 100% markup.
Mm-hmm.
So
but people still went.
McCartney.
Were there any empty seats?
Yeah, there was not. There was not an empty seat in the house, and I had to rely on somebody.
I mean, Peter, there's never enough empty seats after that happens. You know what? The only time you get this occurrence that you would like to see as like the perfect storm is when a team just sucks. Like last year when the Jets were horrible. Yes, you could get tickets for $6 on StubHub, but I had to remind somebody yesterday who I was having this kind of conversation with. I said, you got them for $6, but a season ticket holder did not pay $6. Yeah. He took a bath.
Yeah. And you know, the thing is, it's like, I mean, I know some people who, not personally, but I know people who are ticket brokers. I've had advertisers who were ticket brokers in Toronto, and it's a business for them and it's their livelihood. But you know what? I'm sure there were not too many fans who were crying, who were shedding a tear over the last couple of years for them taking a bath because the Leafs sucked. Because the Leafs sucking, those guys had tickets that were worth thousands of dollars for hundreds of thousands of dollars for the year, and they weren't going to be able to get their money back because nobody wanted to go see a team that was in last place.
Right. See, the dirty secret about the secondary ticket market is that those guys are making their money right at the beginning after the sale goes on. They don't care about the end. The end, when they've got to dump a couple for less than face value, they've already made their money. That's a consumer thing. Again, you price it up the right way, there's nothing left to do. It's the only thing no one's tried yet. That's the problem.
But I know
try it. Because if you're Lady Gaga and you're playing Madison Square Garden, okay, and your opening ticket price is $450, okay? How much more room do you have to pay more for that?
Depends.
Depends
how popular she gets. Depends how bad you want to see it. Depends.
Now in New York it's different, but now you're Lady Gaga and you're playing in Minneapolis. How much more room do you have? You start to fill our $450. So maybe the New York ones should be $850. And what everyone cries, I can't afford $850. Well, you can't afford $350 when it's priced at $100 because of the secondary market. So who cares if you can't afford $850? It's still supply and demand.
Yeah.
You're pricing it according to the level of demand for the market that is.
Well, I'm pretty sure that almost, and this will be the last thing. We'll get on with the games and the injuries that happened over the weekend. Most teams in the league right now have switched to variable pricing plans. If you're playing a Tuesday night game against Nashville, if you're Buffalo, that's a bronze game or a value game. But if you're playing a Friday night against the Habs or the Leafs, it's a platinum game, and that means the ticket price is about 3 times what a value or a bronze game is. That's what the Sabres are doing. That's what a lot of teams are doing. And the only way around that is to be a season ticket holder, because then you get your tickets at the same flat rate the entire.
Here's the other thing too. There's one more component to this that we have to be fair to the league and the teams with, and that is, they'll have these subscriber events, and like the Rangers as an example. Are they one of the more expensive tickets? Yes. But they'll have 4 or 5 different events over the year where they'll say, hey, come and, skate at MSG, and you could skate with, I don't know, Mike Richter, Rod Gilbert. Come to this, hockey talk, and they have 3 or 4 of them I noticed during the year, and they have them at the theater at MSG, and come listen to, Mark Messier and Adam Graves one time. And these are perks for you being a season ticket holder. Sometimes like when I was a Mets season ticket holder for the last year at Shea Stadium, you got a nice little wooden box with the logo. There's always different perks. We have to point out that they do that too. It's not just about what they're doing with the tickets and the pricing and the money. Everybody wants their cut. Everybody wants to figure out how to get a higher percentage. Everybody wants to sort of cut out the middleman and get more for themselves, but it just never works out that way. That's all.
Okay. Some interesting games over the weekend. But if you look at the standings right now, we'll start with the West because we got you, Peter. I look at the West, and right now there just seems to me to be a 3-team race for the final wild card spot. I know that Ack made a case for Dallas still being in the race, and if you look at it right now, Dallas is 11 points behind St. Louis, so I think that's a bridge too far, and they only have 14 games left, so I don't think that's going to happen. Winnipeg's at 66 points. They're 9 points behind the Blues, and I don't think it's logical. I don't think it's realistic that the Jets think they have a chance to climb back into this race with so little time left. I mean, what's the feeling there in Winnipeg about the Jets and their playoff chances?
The feeling in Winnipeg and the playoff chances is after that apathetic effort on Saturday night, where now there's articles being written about how the venue, which is once the rowdiest in the NHL, is now like a morgue. People are getting pretty tired. It's the same routine come the middle of March for this team that it has been the previous 5 years, aside from one season.
Right.
And the fans are resigned to the fact that the playoffs aren't happening again. And questions are being asked, like what's going to change? And they don't have a chance. I don't think Dallas has a chance either. I don't know what switch Dallas would magically flip to turn this around. And for any team that's in the situation like the Jets or Dallas, they need something catastrophic to happen to someone above them.
Right.
Like it's a twofold thing. It's not just a matter of all of a sudden playing 800 hockey to finish the season. They need someone to play 300 above them.
Right. I mean, right now, if you look at the standings, I mean, and Nashville is by no way guaranteed finishing in third, but and Calgary is by no means guaranteed of finishing in third in the Pacific. But right now, you've got L.A., Edmonton, and St. Louis. Edmonton was 79 points. St. Louis was 75. L.A. with 72. Fighting over the 2 wild card spots, and maybe Nashville drops down, maybe Calgary drops down, but it's one of those 5 teams. It's 3 teams fighting for 2 spots. A big game tonight. St. Louis plays at the LA Kings. If the Kings win that game in regulation, they climb to within 1 point of the Blues. So it's not, I mean, I think only obviously one team falls out there. It's a question of which one team does. And Russ, you said it last week. Edmonton lost to Montreal on the weekend. I'm not 100% convinced that Edmonton is going to hold on. They probably will with McDavid, as great as he is, but there's a possibility that they can.
Right. I mean, there's definitely a possibility. Here's the thing. I got a series of questions for you, Peter. Not being a jerk, just because you're the expert in the market. So what year will this be without the playoffs? How many years? Well,
they made the playoff for the Jets, you mean?
Yeah.
They made the playoffs in 2015.
Okay. So it's only a couple of years since then. So, and how many years have they been there now in the new building?
This is the 6th season.
6th season. So it'd be 5 without and 1 with. I mean, to be really honest, in the West, I don't know how much better you expect them, like fans expect them to be. Like there's definitely an improvement. The young guys are improving. You're not going to make the playoffs every year, not until all of your prospects are ready at once. And it's getting closer. I will say it's getting closer, but it's almost like you were caught in that developmental curve, which they are. You have a goalie in the developmental curve, which is always an issue with that.
Yeah.
And you have made the playoffs once, you didn't 5 times. It's not an intolerable situation. I get the fans want more. Fans always want more. But in reality, I don't know what else fans could expect because you can't rush hockey players. That's the bottom line. You have a budget. You can't, you're not going to spend past your budget, your team.
So let me point something out, Russ. In 2011, if you look at the league standings in 2011, overall 1 to 30, there's only one team currently who is below the Jets in that season, currently still below the Jets. So other teams are improving. Other teams are making moves. Other teams are addressing the issues. That one team is Carolina.
Okay, but Carolina is not improving to the point. Well, Carolina has other issues with budget and stuff too. So,
but just remember, the Jets Thrashers have had since 2007 to improve.
No, but forget the Jets Thrashers. When they started, they had to
they bought assets. Those assets were guys like Blake Wheeler, Andrew Ladd, Dustin Byfuglien.
But they still had to gut it for a couple of years. Like when you bought those assets, you still had to figure it out your way, right? And they did eventually make the playoffs. But here's my point. Of those other teams that keep making it, how many are budget teams? Because that's the reality is the Jets are a budget team. So now that does put you in a different – you're not in the same market as the Kings because the Kings will outspend you.
Well, okay,
I don't necessarily agree with that. I don't think the Jets will spend right now because they know that they've got holes and there's no problem trying to address –
No, but they have a smaller venue. They definitely have said they will not go over X amount, and they determine X amount every year.
There is apparently that exists. No one knows what it is.
Right. Well, that's why I said X.
They're only $9 million from the cap. Like $9 million is nothing. We can spend $9 million like that.
I wish I could.
And they have a guy. The co-owner is wealthy enough that he could buy every other team except one in the league all to himself.
But he doesn't want to lose money, so he won't do that.
As of right now, if you look at the standings of the teams that are in the playoffs right now, I would say there's 2 teams in each conference that are budget teams. I think Anaheim is a budget team in the Pacific. I think Nashville is in the Central, although sometimes they don't act like it, but I think they are. Columbus and Ottawa in the Eastern Conference. So,
what I would say is when you're a budget team, Mike, you have to expect this rotation where there's going to be years you're not going to be in it. Anaheim is exceptional, where they have been in it every year, but they already had their core. And Peter can say that you guys got assets from Atlanta, but you didn't get a core like Anaheim got out of it from the draft. You started to really draft seriously 5-6 years ago, and you are starting to see a lot of those players do well, like in Ehlers and Hellebuck, but you see it takes time. And so
look, I was in a meet and greet with the assistant GM about a month ago. A private thing for certain season ticket holders, and Craig Heisinger, who is a very well-respected
guy,
very well and a smart guy, who's very candid, and he said in his view, and he was filling in for Chevy couldn't be there, in his view, in a draft and develop model, they were not where they needed to be yet. And he said that's and he's upfront about that. I don't think the organization as a whole is upfront about that. I know Mark Chipman, we cross over the owner in some other social circles, and he's very candid with people too. He's not some guy, it's a small city, right? He has said people don't understand how hard it is to win in this league. And
that is true.
And he's right. What the counterpoint for the fans of Winnipeg is, well, if it's that hard, how come you're not doing more to address the issues that we can all see? And that's where the fan sentiment is, right or wrong, Russ. Like, I know what you're saying, right or wrong. So somewhere between the message of what Zinger's saying and what Chipman's saying and how the fans see is probably the reality of how the fix is. It's just getting everyone there to that point to figure it out.
Okay, but just I'm just going to use a small example because I don't want to stay in Winnipeg the whole time. But as a small example, this past year you drafted Line, boom, he's in the lineup, he's an instant hit. No problem there. And you've got a few other guys I think that will make it from that.
Yeah.
2015, Kyle Connor, boom, he's already playing. Is he a little bit behind? Sure, because he needs to get a little stronger. And we know Roslovic's going to be a stud too. Even out of that draft, you'll get a few other guys. No real problem there. 2014, Nick Ehlers, boom. This year he's a stud. And you'll get a couple of other guys out of that draft too. 2013, Morrissey, he's in there. Patan, he's in there, but they are still developing. So it's not even been like a real drafting issue. What it's been is what you inherited, what you had to get rid of, and what you added free agent issue. That's what it seems to me is what the Winnipeg Jets are about. The part of the drafting side has been good, and even the development side, I would say, is pretty good.
No, and I don't think anyone challenges that. I think what they're saying is you're doing one thing really well. Now you got to start doing the other things well. But when does that start?
And the fact
that's the fan sentiment.
And the fact that Pavlik stood on his head, and that was one of the only reasons that they got in the playoffs.
Exactly. 3 straight shutouts.
And they have not had the goaltending that could get them to the next level since then. I like Hellebuyck. I think he's a good goaltender, but I think they need legitimate established goaltending to make the playoffs right now, and they're not getting that out of Hellebuyck right now. Maybe they'll get that out of him 2 or 3 years from now, but not right now.
Or even next year. They might get it next year.
Now, okay, switching to the East, and I think the race is a little more complex there. Although, Russ, I wonder, first of all, can we ring the death knell for the Flyers and for Florida? Because the Flyers, they lose to Toronto late last week. And they lose a heartbreaker against Boston with 5 seconds left to go in regulation. Could have gotten a point, but a deflection off of Brandon Manning's stick gets by Mason. They lose 2-1 to the Bruins. They're at 70 points. The Florida Panthers have lost 4 games in a row. They face Toronto tomorrow night, but they lose Aaron Ekblad. We're going to talk about injuries in a second. They lose Aaron Ekblad to a concussion for a week to 10 days. They're at 69 points. Can we ring the death knell on these guys, or are they still in the race?
For Florida, we can ring the death knell. Yeah, for Buffalo, of course, we can ring the death knell. I can't ring it for Philly. Last year when I rang it for Philly, they made it on the last game of the year. I went on local television. I said, I don't think they'll make it. It did take a miracle for them to make it.
Right.
Could it happen again? Yes. With all these injuries occurring, it is possible that these guys, because they did it last year, could do it again. So I'm not going to fully count them out today. Yeah. I'm going to wait a little longer for them. And Tampa, the same thing. Tampa has gained some momentum even after these losses of players, but they brought in some youth that is serving them well, and they're getting good goaltending. And so I'm going to wait on the rest.
I mean, Florida's got all their forwards back, but I got called out by a couple Leaf fans or Reimer fans about me being too hard on James Reimer. I'm sorry.
It's their defense too. I mean, if we're going to be truly fair, at the beginning of the year, we were questioning Florida because of the turnover on defense. And I think at the end of the year, we're still fair to question Florida on the turnover of defense because it's not what they'd hoped it would be.
But I think, Russ, you nailed it right there. It's not what they hoped they would be. And Eck loves to say, and I say it all the time, hope is not a plan.
Right.
And Florida they have a plan, and there's very specific with what the owner wants to create and build there. We're all aware of it.
Yeah.
But they've deviated from the plan. They've had some things go wrong with the plan. Right. And now hope enters into it because all of a sudden they fire Gallant, things go into a tailspin. Now you're hoping when do they pull out?
Right. And Keith Yandel was a big factor that I didn't like in the signings because I saw the kind of player Keith is. Like, he's a very good offensive player. He's not a great defensive player. And I noticed on the Rangers, it's very hard to find a partner for Keith Yandel. And I think in Florida, they've had the same problem.
And Florida wins. They get Huberdeau, they get Barkov back. They win 5 games in a row on the road, and everybody's thinking everything is beautiful. And then Luongo gets hurt,
right?
And they go. I think it's 1-5-1 in a homestand, it was like in their last 7. I think there was 1 road game in there, and now they've lost 4 in a row. Now they play Toronto tomorrow night, and if there's a must win for the season, it's going to be that for Florida because if they lose that, they'll be 9 points behind Toronto, and Toronto right now is holding on to the last spot. That'll be it.
And this is why winning the Stanley Cup is hard, because when the owner said, I want to win it within 3 years, and I said, boy, that's a tough thing to prognosticate. Yeah. This is what makes it tough, because even if everything was right, there was always a chance Luongo could get hurt because of his age. He did bring that up too. Yeah. That's an obvious point that will be brought up now for the rest of his term there in Florida, because as he gets older, if he gets nicked up, yes, Reimer's a decent backup. If they had better defense, I feel like Reimer would look a little better, and I think that would help them. They don't have that, so they're not going to make it. That's just the way it is.
Looking at the realistic teams in the East right now, Boston's at 78 points. They're in 3rd place in the Atlantic. The Leafs are at 76. They win their 3rd straight against Carolina on the weekend in overtime. You've got the Islanders at 75 points. They lose to St. Louis, but they're coming off their long road trip. Now their schedule, 15 games left, 7 at home, 8 on the road. It's pretty balanced. Tampa Bay is 3 points behind Toronto. They play Toronto head-to-head on Thursday. Tampa plays tonight. So do the Islanders. The Islanders play Carolina. Tampa plays the Rangers in New York. So that'll be a tough game with Antti Ranta in goal. Right. So we got a really, really tight race the last 15 games. Now, Russ, what we've noticed here is the string of injuries that have been popping up. Yep. Lundqvist goes out. Ryan Murray's out 4 to 6 weeks. Carl Hagelin out with Pittsburgh. We just mentioned Ekblad. I mean, yes, this might be the right time for these injuries to take place.
Other than Ekblad, the other ones, yes.
Right. But you brought up an interesting point about sports science.
Yeah, well, what's happening now, I guess, in the NBA, it's really a factor, is with sports science, now coaches are preemptively resting players, right? We've seen this with the 76ers. There's some cockamamie report that they get. I think it's from Australia, but for wherever they get it, whatever dark office, that decides this chart on when, like, Joel Embiid was allowed to play and wasn't allowed to play. Now he doesn't play at all, so it doesn't matter. And really, same thing goes for some other injured players. And now I'm noticing other teams are picking up on that, and Steve Kerr was doing that. And Steve Kerr is now resting some players. And then Cleveland, what team is Steve Kerr coaching? I don't even know.
Golden State. Golden State.
That's a big team. And then Cleveland is now resting players like LeBron James and other players. And it's kind of unfair to the fans because when you're summarily resting players that you know are going to be playing in the playoffs, but people have paid good money for tickets and they bought them a year in advance maybe or 6 months in advance, you're also hurting your TV product when you're resting players, because when they advertise a game like, hey, LeBron James against whatever, and neither guy, let's say, neither guy shows up and they're both in the promo, it doesn't look good for the station and for, the ABC or whoever's hosting it. That doesn't really happen much in the NHL. And it's a good thing it doesn't happen because they're more of a fringe business than the NBA is.
Yeah, but you never know if it's not gonna happen in the NHL.
It used to happen.
Yeah,
I mean, not with sports science though, Peter. It used to happen.
No, I know. I mean, Scotty Bowman did this a lot, and when he had those 120-point seasons, I mean, he was starting to sit guys now. I mean, I don't blame him. And Russ, I think your points are absolutely bang on. First and foremost, it doesn't matter what sport you're in entertainment business.
Right.
Unfortunately, there's so much money in this business that the need to win is dictating part of the value of the entertainment for the fan and for the franchise itself. You need the wins as much as anything. But as an overall holistic thing, the fan wants to see LeBron James. They want to see Sidney Crosby. They want to see Connor McDavid. So if you're the Jets right now, and you're talking to the Jets again, what do you have left? Well, you have the superstars coming in that the fans want to see. And that's it.
Right.
And all of a sudden, it's like, well, I don't want to risk McDavid getting hurt against Winnipeg in a mean-nothing game for them.
Well,
ooh, I mean, there's issues there.
Here's the thing. So
go ahead, Russ.
I'm looking at an article, and Kerr decided he would rest guys on a back-to-back.
Yeah.
That's what the situation was that he blamed it on. Doc Rivers hired some sports science guys over the summer. It's like, at the end of the day, fans don't want to hear about sports science, and I bet you players don't either.
Well, let's just say this. I mean, to a much, much, much lesser extent, this has touched the NHL in the sense that the backup goaltender is always playing the second half of back-to-backs because they've seen analytically that the backup goaltender playing fresh is better than the starting goaltender starting in the second of back-to-backs. Sure. So in a way, I think that's influenced the NHL, but we're not having Sidney Crosby being sat out. But the thing is, I could say the Maple Leafs are home and cooled out and they have a playoff spot locked in late March and they go to Carolina, and there were a lot of Leaf fans that went to Carolina and bought tickets because it was probably cheaper for them to fly to Raleigh and get a ticket for the Hurricanes game. Imagine they do that and Austin Matthews doesn't play, like in the NBA. If I was a Leaf fan, I would be pissed off.
Yeah,
and go ahead, Russ.
No, I was just gonna say, when you're hiring guys to do this job, Locally, Brian Baldinger's on local Philly radio here. He's a good dude. I've met him. Smart guy with the NFL. He actually brought up a very good point. He said, when does it come out where sports science says you should play? And he's right. Yeah. Like, usually the sports science detracts when a guy should play, and teams take it as a, well, we shouldn't do this. And it seems to be a preventative rather than saying, well, you should play him, and you should play him 15 in a row because he's hot. Like, you don't hear that.
Yeah. And, you know, and Russ, that is this guy a lawyer too? Because that's lawyer thinking, right?
No, he's not. He's a former player. He's just
flipping it around. But to use your example, Mike, in fact, if it's the Leafs and they do, you know, they sew up a spot, okay, and they got to go into Carolina and play, that's probably actually where you want to play Marner and Matthews and Nylander and work on some things. Work on, like, you know, okay, so now Babcock says, because these guys are young enough. I get the resting of LeBron James or maybe a Sidney Crosby. These truly elite talents kind of now on the over the halfway point of their career, so to speak, right? You know, that I understand more. But for a talent like a McDavid, a Matthews, a Laine, or whatever, these new young guys, a Marner, you go into Carolina and you say, no, we're trying this formation because you're going to see this part of the game. So when we go back to playoffs, you're going to remember what this guy's doing. Remember when Bowman put Fedorov back on defense? Yeah. I'm not saying something so extreme. He was an exceptional case, but it's that kind of idea.
Well, that's why I said a couple years from now, because right now, I mean, they have lessons to learn, and I think that's the case. But if they're like, if a few years from now, if they're established and they're a playoff team, you know, you can see that happening. And I'm like, that for a fan, that's sort of the roll of the dice. Okay,
now, getting back to the injuries, for most of these injuries, teams are probably being overly cautious now if they feel like the playoffs are locked up, and I don't blame them. That's a different story.
Especially Lundqvist.
Because he's an older goalie. He said he tweaked his hip, which means it's probably like a hip flexor or something like that. And we know that could turn into something worse with play. So he's going to rest it. They'll probably do some things with it. And then we'll see. But the point is, like with Lundqvist, so he'll come back a couple weeks before the playoffs. You hope he'll be the same. We've seen Lundqvist sometimes come back, and it takes him a little while to round into it. And then they're going to have to play, let's say, Montreal. Like, that's, you know, again, this is not ideal. For Ekblad, this kills Florida. Like, it's over. Like, without Ekblad, Florida's done. Like, they're done on a plate. There's probably nothing they can do, Luongo healthy or not. You know, Murray, hey, they got the two-headed goalie monster. They're fine. That's not an issue either. It's bad for my fantasy team, but it's not bad for the rest of the world. And so I think that, you know, teams being cautious is one thing, but I'm glad they don't, like, sit 3 guys or 4 guys, because Pittsburgh could certainly walk in, like, you know, if they're locked up and say, well, yeah, Crosby's not playing, Malkin's not playing, Fleury's not playing, Letang's not playing. But they have, Mike, you brought up a good point, and what blocks a lot of that from happening.
Well, and it's funny because I was looking at the Leaf schedule, and the last weekend of the season, they play Pittsburgh and they play Columbus. And right now, all those teams are fighting tooth and nail for positioning, for home ice advantage, for you know who to play against. So I mean, unless there's a break in that division where one team just jumps out ahead and everybody's locked into place, those teams are going to play all their players even up to the last game of the season.
I meant the call-up rule where you were talking about.
Right. I know what you were saying, but I was bringing up the call-up rules. Almost the league, they put in the limit of 4 call-ups after the trade deadline. So even if you wanted to, like, bring up half of Rochester, if you were the Buffalo Sabres, you couldn't do it unless the entire team was struck with mumps,
right,
and you could call them up on emergency recall. So, you know, that sort of prevents any kind of chicanery going on.
Yeah, and it's a good thing. It protects the fans, I think.
Yeah. Now, 8 games in the league tonight. I think that the most key matchups, again, are the Lightning at the New York Rangers, Philly in a must-win situation against the Blue Jackets in Philadelphia. The Islanders need to win 2 points against the Hurricanes. And I think the big matchup of the night is the late start, the Blues and the Kings. Bruins need to win over the Canucks in Vancouver, and the Penguins and the Flames. Well, the Flames are the hottest team in the NHL right now. Peter, you wanted to bring up something finally about the week break. I know they talked about it at the GM's meetings.
So we had this weird experiment this year with the idea of giving the players a break, and I think this is a long overdue idea.
Yeah.
But how they did it was completely backwards, like a lot of things at the NHL. And to compound it, it's almost like they had the World Cup of Hockey in there to get the late start and everything. So it was a bad year to try this. But what I don't understand is, I know they want to spread it out for teams. Now they're going to do half off, half on twice for a week. Right. But one of the things they don't really consider, and they don't market around then very well, and they don't promote games very well around then, is the Christmas break. Why not add 4 more days, 2 on either side to the Christmas break?
Yeah.
So, or extend it out a little longer. Because what's going on then? NBA owns Christmas Day. Your chances are you're going to overrun with playoff implications in NFL games.
Mm-hmm.
World Juniors starts on Boxing Day, and you got other bowl games happening then for college. It's the perfect time to just add 3 days on. If you're giving 4, add 3 more on. You can break it up a little bit depending on teams, like starting here, starting there, and let them have their Christmas with their families, go someplace south, whatever, and give them that time, and it doesn't mess with the rest of the schedule.
Yeah.
It seems like such an obvious solution, but obviously the NHL don't always fit together.
And depending on the scheduling, it could be the final week of the NFL season too. I mean, sometimes it falls around there. Yeah, I mean, you could extend out, because right now it's the 24th through the 26th. They don't play on Boxing Day. I know, because usually the AHL teams play at the Air Canada Center on Boxing Day. If you extended out that break to, say, the 23rd to the 27th, that would make sense. But I mean, honestly, the half league off, half league on break, it really is up to whether the NHL is going to the Olympics or not. And if we're not going to know about that probably until July, August, the way it's going right now.
Yeah. So I mean, from all indications, that's still a big if.
Yeah,
a very big if.
But I think
I can't even spend breath talking about that anymore. Like, I just
let's if you wanted just a couple quick thoughts, because I was chatting with a couple guys about this on Saturday.
Okay.
What if you have a situation where Ovi says, "I am going,"
right,
and Ted Leonis has said he's supported it. He's come out and said, "I understand," and he goes. Can you imagine?
I think the league will have a deal in place for that, saying, the player and or the franchise will get fined X amount and maybe miss a certain amount of games. Like, they're not going to just let him skip out.
So then go back to the earlier conversation. What's the difference between having him resting versus off doing something else? You know what I mean? He's still not there to sell tickets.
The player's choice, right? Like, here's the thing. Okay, so if you want to get really real about it, you could say, okay, we want to give the players a week off to rest. But depending on the player, how do you know they're even resting? They could be out every night. They could be out until 4 a.m. every night. They could be out playing other sports every night. They could be out cliff diving every night. You don't know.
Check their Instagram, Russ. That's how you'll know.
Right.
But Ovi is going to be taking his 2-week vacation in Pyeongchang. That's where he's taking it. Right. But I mean, yes, and I mean, what if Ovi goes and then Kuznetsov wants to go and back?
The league will take action against. I guarantee it. The league is not going to let their stars just walk away, even if the owner's okay with it. They're not going to be okay with it.
You made the point a few months ago, and Hockey Canada and USA Hockey are very dependent on the NHL in regards of revenue, in regards of other things that they deal with together. But is it plausible that the Russians or the Finns or the Swedes, some of them would go to those Olympics, would just bolt? Yes. Is it potential that Crosby or, a prominent U.S. player would go? I would doubt it, because they would, Hockey Canada and...
I don't think you'll see a single U.S. or Canadian player go.
Right.
Well,
you'll see a Swede or two, a Finn or two, a Latvian or two. You'll see a Russian or two, because those teams will offer to pay the financial part for the player, but that's why the league will also impose probably suspended games, I'm sure.
And think about it this way: if those players go and the U.S. and Canadian players don't go, then it makes the Olympics look more of a sideshow than anything, because it's not a fair and balanced. It actually makes the World Cup look better because everybody is there.
Frankly, though, I mean, I like Olympic hockey, but I don't like it. There's parts of it that are great, but it's not really interesting until you get into the knockout stage for me. Tell you honest truth, it just isn't. But I'm actually more intrigued that if the NHL doesn't participate, because they've been there since '98, what do we see next? Like what's going to fill in the gaps? Like where do the players coming from? Where is it? Was it something
undrafted players?
Is it something the AHL may want to step in with? Could they do that?
No, because they won't want to step on the toes of the NHL. So the AHL and ECHL will stay out of it. It'll be the person that's completed college but it's not in the NHL and wasn't drafted. Yeah. It'll be the guy who maybe just got drafted but decides he'll delay his season by a few months so he could do this. Yeah. And then go play in the AHL if he's a European. It's the player who had to force into retirement a few years too early and now is healthy and wants to play, or even a guy who retired and decides he wants to come out of retirement.
Yeah. Peter, it's the Spengler Cup. That's what it's going to be.
Well, it'll be better than that because not everybody jumps to play the Spengler Cup, but like let's just say Ryan Miller has no contract signed and the Olympics are out there and the NHL is not participating, he might decide to go because he's like, I don't have a contract anyhow.
That's what Peter Nedved did. That's what Lindgren did. So
I think it could be interesting in its own right.
Oh, it'll be interesting. I mean, look, hockey fans, devoted hockey fans will always find interest in the weird and the macabre that way. And if there's even like Peter Pruka making a comeback, some of us are going to watch. Like
and we'll all be debating where he's going to sign, Russ, after the tournament.
Right. And that's what'll happen. So I'm not really worried about that. I'm just like fatigued from the whole conversation.
All right. On that note, before Russ falls asleep, we'll end the show and we will be back tomorrow with another edition of the Hockey Buzzcast. Thanks to Peter Tessier. Thanks to Russ Cohen. I'm Michael Agello. And remember, without the buzz, it's just hockey.